I knew nothing about that's going on here in Maine that's really, really crucial work. And that's the Wabanaki Maine Welfare Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Something that I found totally startling that in the 1970s and 80s, the Maine welfare system took the children of the 4 tribes in Maine and placed them with white foster families so that the language, and it was used at the turn of the century, was to kill the Indian and save the man. And to realize that that happened in my adult life was shocking to me. So I'm working with the TRC as a statement gatherer, and one of the things we do is sit with these people who have these incredibly traumatic stories of abuse and trauma, and it's just a simple act of witnessing and allowing them to tell that story. And I tell this story, their story, just in the sense that I was really ignorant about this heritage that we are a part of, and I just wanted to let everybody know that this is something you should be aware of and seek to find out more. It's going on it's been going on for about a year, and it'll go on for about another 15 months, but it's really, really important work.
And isn't there both story and portraiture? There's a lot of layers in this work right now that's using arts in the healing process.
What I'm going to say now may probably show my ignorance, but you just have to pardon me. It's my background. From my experience, I realized that, artwork or artist needs to tailor their message to the audience. I mean, you hear comedians speaking. They know who they're talking about. Writers, they have their genre. I mean, musicians, you could classify them. But in Maine, maybe I've not mingled enough with a lot of the artists. Well, I know about Stephen King's writing a lot of horror movies and horror books or whatever. Are there that segmentation where you know your audience and you tailor and you go after those audience to maximize input rather than, oh, we made it for everybody, so everybody should come? And that has not been working. I mean, in my own context, with the minority communities. But if I remember then, the Center for Transcultural Exchange usually brings artists and musicians, but sustainability was a big issue. It has to be closed. And what happened then? Who knows why they closed? I don't know. But that was an example of tailoring to those set of community, and there was a lot of patronage during that period. So the question to the artists in Maine is, are you tailoring? Are you aggressively telling your stories to get more audience to join you? Or you're just, well, I'm doing it for whoever is interested to come?
Elise, you're next, because I know you have something to say about this. But I do want to, another thing that I didn't have time to mention, as Natasha reminded me, was the power of language and the power of words. And in the state of Maine, we have a really strong literary community. And much of that work has been directed toward problem solving, particularly in the poetry. We have many, many wonderful poets in the state of Maine, and they tackle tough stuff all the time. So I want to thank you for your work on the Truth and Reconciliation. I am a little tiny bit Apache, so I have a great affinity with that particular form of oppression, and bravo to you.
Okay. As I was listening to everybody talk, and Tommy can probably even predict what I'm going to say, but my name is Jeanette Andoni, and I'm on faculty at the USM School of Social Work, and have a long history of being a social worker. And I just want to say that I think that social work is art, that really the best social workers are artists. And as a frustrated artist myself, and I don't do visual art, I don't play music, and I don't, all these things that I wish I did, I feel like that in the work that you do with people, and picking up on what you just said about the power of language language is the tool of social work. Language in a lot of different forms, and the use of, you know, having the skill and the ability to listen and pay attention to the finest details of people's lives. And that is really, it takes an artistic ear to do that well. So I think that social workers really need to move in the direction of thinking of themselves and their work as art. And I think that we also have to be very critical of the systems in which we work that create barriers to our thinking of ourselves in that way. We are locked into positions where people are looking at our outcomes, and we have to measure and, you know, quantify everything, and that can pull us away from that the high quality work that we really can do as social work artists, I think. So I just wanted to say that, because I think it really doesn't need to be siloed in that way. So.
Thanks. I absolutely agree, and I do. I think, you know, the core of social work is to meet the client where they're at, and I think artists do the same with their work. You put it out there, and is there to meet the viewer wherever they're at, and it's to engage the emotion. And I think ultimately, right now we're working on the work of Jonathan Haidt, and he discusses how to make change. You have the rider and you have the elephant, and the elephant is fueled by, you know, the emotion. And I feel that art is emotion, thus art will fuel the change. And that's what we as social workers do, because we meet the client where they're at to then identify what change will work best for them. Just a little comment.
Can you wait?
I think that's why a lot of artists, you know, a lot of people who become social workers, is a high percentage of them who are artists. That's not an accident. So, yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
So can I ask folks on the panel then, what keeps social workers or folks who are doing social change work from seeing themselves as artists? Not as a trite question, but I mean, we named that there are barriers, but I'd be curious to see if we could take a little time and name what they are. What keeps people from getting there?
I think the faculty just mentioned a very significant one. Well, you get trained, you came out, you're a professional, you find yourself in different jobs, positions, and many of the positions are all maybe grant funded, and many of those folks have to really be working against the outcomes or deliverables, and that kind of sometimes can stymie your creativity. And you now start saying, okay, I will see the artwork as a hobby for me to do, rather than my core piece of doing whatever. Because, well, first of all, I got family to deal with. I got to, give the deliverables, which is already taking most of my time. So funding, and the perception of the people that hire you, they probably didn't hire you to come here and then. When people say, okay, you got to be creative as to what to do, but within the ambit of what we tell you. Not giving you that freedom to say, okay, I think we could do it this way. Oh, no, you know what? We got to do it according to this. We have deliverables to meet. Maybe, well, let's put that in the parking lot. We will deal with that later. Later will be tomorrow. Tomorrow will be tomorrow. And tomorrow continues to be tomorrow. So funding constraints, perception of the employers, and the perception of people around, being an artist is something that you need to enjoy. Maybe it's not even work per se. Unless you're a professional artist, then go and be doing your stuff as a professional. But to say, okay, you are under a department and you want to bring artwork, you gotta have to be very creative to beat some of those barriers.
Kevin, I love your question. I think someone was mentioning stories. The history or story of social work would be one of the reasons I think social workers don't conceive of themselves as artists. Historically, it's a discipline that's problematic. I mean, historically, it was a bunch of white women who decided who the deserving poor were and were not. So that's the context of this discipline. And then I would also say maybe we're forgetting our own imagination.
I think the problem is that everybody's become specialized. But I think the problem is that everybody's become specialized. But I do think that everybody who works at anything and does a good job of it is working creatively with originality, and at their best moments are inspired. And that's exactly the same language and the same motivations that apply to creating quote unquote traditional works of art. So you are all probably artists on your good days.
It just occurs to me that the work of the artist slash subversive slash social worker sometimes is done in the middle and sometimes it's done in the margins, and there is value in both positions. There's freedom. Freedom is often quite valuable in those positions, but there's also perspective, and you get a different perspective in the middle and you get a different perspective on the margins. And why do the silos suck the life out of us, right, might be the question that we shouldn't waste much time on. But I think it's really exciting to have this conversation with people and to share it and to not just have it here and today. And that's why I just love if we talk to someone long enough, we have the same story. So.
As a therapist, I have found myself at times being asked whether I'm an artist, because my wife is an artist. So when we're at a show or something, and I've come to the point where I consider that my art is with the brain. But what I really want to say is that using art with the people that we work with probably has been the most fulfilling and most meaningful. Not as myself as an artist, but the art that the children who have terminal illnesses make to leave as a gift for their parents. The art that the children from the Center for Grieving Children made and had a show at the Portland Museum some years ago. It's probably the most moving art exhibit that I've seen. How we use art in our lives, whether we're therapists or whether we're artists, visual artists or performers, using art with our children, with our grandchildren, with our friends. How do we share what we experience? How do we share what inspires us? And how do we give that feedback? Working with a 7-year-old and proclaiming them an artist for what they're creating creates artists. And I think using art, seeing ourselves as people using art is kind of what I enjoy and feel meaningful in life.
I just want to call attention to the fact that we're in the lightning round now. So we'll take quick questions and quick answers so that we can be respectful of everybody's time.
So I think I work with Tommy, and for me, I think engaging in the act of art with the folks that we're working with. So, providing the space for it, but also it's political to engage with. And one of the more powerful experiences I've had at Preble Street was when I did the off the cuff with Tommy, and there was someone in the group that I had been really struggling to engage with. I was like, I don't understand, this isn't really working. And then Tommy said, well, why don't you come to off the cuff? And I was so nervous. And I realized that engaging in art allowed me to engage in vulnerability, and the dichotomy of worker and client kind of was manipulated in a space that I was then the person that I had been trying to work with was having me act out these things and making me uncomfortable, right? And that allowed him to then be able to engage in a conversation about housing that we hadn't been able to have later. So I think finding the space for us to engage in the act of creating with people is a really beautiful way to build partnership and change also. But I appreciate what you're doing, Tommy.
Thank you. I'm gonna pass the microphone down the line and ask you all. you kind of get free reign here. You can respond to one of the two things that you just heard, or if you like and you prefer, feel free to share like one takeaway from today's conversation. It's obviously the start and not the end of a conversation, but would love to hear if there are things that you feel like you learned or points that you really wanted to make today that you haven't had a chance to yet. And I'll start waving frantically at you in case you go a little bit too long.
All right. For me, first of all, I have to thank you for coming. Sorry, you can hear me at the back. That I have to thank you for coming. But a couple of things that became so evident for me that I think I need to just nail down as a summary. Well, I think art or artwork or artistry should be part of our daily life. Whether you're a clinician, whether you are a social worker, or you are a full-blown artist, if we can imbibe the spirit of making it as part of our life, the impression of sallowing would not be coming to the subconscious. Because if you talk about hard work, everybody's like, is that your work? No, it's like, it's a different profession. You don't do it here. No. That is why some of us have been trying many ways to see, well, let's listen to stories. Let's have a cultural day. Let's have drumming session. Those kind of things. Creativity in making it possible is also our responsibility. Even amidst all the negative impression as per, oh no, you're in healthcare, you are consulting. No. So one thing I want to say as a takeaway is, if everyone can make it as part of their life, it trickles out. Number two is, artists themselves should not be shy to talk about themselves. Do you know the funny thing? There's an adage that says, nobody can fight for you except yourself. The second adage is, if you want to carry a load, you don't ask somebody to carry it from the beginning for you. You have to carry it halfway, then somebody's going to help you to take it to the top. But if you're waiting, I got a load, please come and help me carry it. Oh, I tell you, you're going to stay there for a long time. So be your own advocate. Number three is funding. I'm sure there are so many foundations that are really very friendly that will be ready. Come up with those creative ideas. Well, maybe there may not be many, but one or two. If one listens, second person listens, they will get you. Number four, can't you just come together?
How many numbers are there?
How many numbers? Okay, I promise this last one. Number four, come together. Come together. One person can be sucked out, but multiple people cannot be sucked out at once. If you come together and talk in one unison, you can fight many challenges. We will succeed together. Thank you.
I have two. No. First of all, in social work we talk about the client being the expert, and I feel like as artists we are experts on ourselves too. But what this has taught me is learning how to verbalize that expertise, and like I said, my discussion was definitely more on a micro level, but this has forced me to examine how my work can impact on a larger level. And I'm still learning. And so this kind of helped me to frame that. I want to end my segment with two quotes from the research. And this is quotes from the clients. And this will directly speak to what art did for them. I think the basic feeling or sense that I got was the value of laughter, of meaning. I suppressed my inner peace and happiness for about 6 months, probably due to some sadness, some anxiety. And off the cuff, I smiled for the first time in a very long time. And secondly, anything to engage the folks here at Preble Street and letting the folks out there know that we're not all the stereotypical drug-addicted, lazy, homeless people or whatever they perceive us to be. A lot of people have conceptions about the homeless people that are simply not true. And I feel that it's through the work that we're doing with Off the Cuff and art that they're able to understand that because the stigma is so entrenched in them, that they begin to feel that's all they are. But art has shown them that that's simply not true. And they are, in fact, still the experts on their lives.
Tommy, you just made me think of something when you said the word smile. And I was just thinking, one of my takeaways is, why are we so serious? I haven't laughed very much in this room today, so that's interesting. And then I'd say the thing I wanted to say is that I think about art making. I look at a site, and the way I think about art is what is possible in that space. And there are an infinite number of possibilities. And I think the same thing with social work. And so to me, the fundamental question, because there's no dualism between art and social work, but is just what compelling stories are we living? What are we doing with that space, whether it is a life or a town or a neighborhood or a community entity? We can live really good stories.
How did creativity get sucked out of our lives and disallowed in the workplace? That's a shame. And I think that to all of our points, welcoming it back in is a salvation of sorts, to go back to religious terminology and the inspired answer. I think that funders and people in power are understanding that we need to bring together all of our expertises into a one room to help make our world better. And I think that's the big takeaway today, that we all are interested in problem solving through creativity.
Thanks. I'm conscious of time, so I just want to take a moment and thank the university again for playing host to what I hope you all found to be a useful conversation. Thank you all for coming, and ask you to join me in thanking the panelists who did such a great job.
Thank you.